Mossberg 183K. A bolt-action 410 shotgun from the mid-50s, and the second in a pair of gunsmith specials we stumbled upon here at the Mossberg Garage during a whirlwind bargaining session for our next featured firearm. I'm certainly vulnerable during deal making to a firearm that needs help, one that is in such rough shape and seemingly obsolete that its fate in the junk pile is virtually sealed. I can see what it can be. Looking at it laying on the counter, I'm already formulating my refurbishment plan. I'm okay with its shortcomings. I'm okay with a 75% miss rate on the trap field. Just let me get you home. Let me fix you up. Let me show the Mossberg Garage crew what you can do. Everyone, watch your step by the junk pile and come with me. Mossberg Garage. Mossberg shotguns. Here we have the model 183K. Most of today's enthusiasts think the 500 is the only one they made. That's why we are here. This is a bolt action internal 2-round magazine fed 410 bore 3-inch chambered shotgun with a 25-inch C-Lect choked barrel, which were made from 1953 to 1954. And of course, that is just for this specific variation. Through all iterations of this design, they were produced from 1947 to 1986. And we have previously featured the earlier variant, the 1950 to 1953 produced 183DB. So, once again, do me a favor, follow the link in the description to the Mossberg Garage video on the Mossberg 183DB. This is important because for this video, we're taking over where we left off. And we were way into model option and variation examination. And trust me, we both need to be caught up to speed. So I'll see you back here in a few. And don't worry, there's going to be a link on that DB video to return here. So here are our Mossberg 410 Mossberg Garage exhibits. The model 83 from 1936 to 1938. I'll link the video to this one down there way at the bottom, just in case you want to check it out. This is an awesome shotgun. And the 183 DB from 50 to 54. Now, the 83 is of such an earlier design that although related through evolution, it is so far removed that it doesn't even do much for comparison here. So it's really here just to say hello. And, you know, you gotta let Grandpa just visit in the video, you know what I mean? But for our comparisons here, the DB placed next to the K certainly shows an identical look, but the internal changes are interesting, and we'll be able to examine them now. Let's take a look at the Mossberg Chronology first. So this is what we got going here. Let me position this in a good spot. You see the 183DB, the 183K, both on here now. So if you look at this, it kind of looks like it was a chronology right straight through, but not really. The two differences between the D and the K See, on the top is all D's here. The bottom is all K's. The reason is that these started, the K's started the C-Lect chokes. Now, in case you're in the dark, let's take a look at what the difference between the chokes is. So the C-Lect choke is basically an adjustable choke. Just by spinning it, you're able to adjust. We took some looks at this in the last video, but you can see that turning this outer choke collar here squeezes and constricts that inside part, and depending on how much you turn it determines how choked it is. So that's on the K. And on the DB, we have just removable chokes. This is a full choke. This is a modified choke. And just the collar itself is restricted. And if you notice, the threads in these are on the outside. So it is kind of curious that they don't give you a cylinder one, really. I don't think a cylinder one is available in these types of chokes. I don't believe so. And with the threads on the outside, it's tough to think that you would be doing any damage with it not being on. But Mossberg, tell you right now, they do not recommend firing it with these things off. But like I said, with the threads on the outside, kind of interesting. It's not what you're normally used to. You would think that that would be the way to produce a cylinder choke, but that is the big difference with these two chokes. So what you could do basically is you could take this Chronology and you could draw a line right there. And the reason why you would do that is because the timeline is almost the same along here, if you notice. That one matches up with the next. Just about. Might be off by a year or so. But it says right here that the 183K is the same as the DC, but with the C-Lect choke and barrel. It made the barrel a little bit longer that it had the C-Lect choke. And the chamber is also the same. These were the same chamber size even. So the only difference that it's saying here is just the choke, but not to the B, to the C. So if we really wanted to compare the two, let's say, we could just go from the DB to the DC. So aside from the C-Lect choke, we'd also be changing whatever it says here. Change in ejector and the sight. I mean, of course, there'd be a change in the sight because of the way the chokes are, configured there. We change the sight, of course. But change in ejector. That's what interests us. So is it really just the ejector? We get in here to the Brownells. We were just in there in the last video. We make sure we're not getting a glare. And again, we're going from the DB to the DC, right? Am I correct over here? DB. Yeah, we're going from the DB to the DC. So we could look right here and go from the DB to the DC. We did this in the last video. We were here and we were looking at this piece right here. The change from this piece right here to that piece right there. Is it really just the ejector? 619 is listed as a ejector and 738 is listed as ejector / interrupter. We don't see anything about interrupter in the Chronology. So what do we turn to? We turn to another source of information. Another source of information would be the Wikipedia page on these that we were also looking at in the last video. We were breaking down all these different modifications on here, remember? Well, we take a look right here. From B to C, the changes ejector, interrupter added. That's the difference. The difference is this firing pin change was from the A to the B. So the firing pin change done on both of these. Firing pins should look the same. The difference we should see here is with this ejector and interrupter. So let's get them back up on the table here again. I could show you. I was going to just do this on video like this, but you can take a look inside the receiver right here. This is on the K. This is the interrupter right there. And on the DB, you can see the receiver is cut a little bit different of a ejector slash interrupter. Let's just take a look. Here's a picture of the receiver wall on the DB. Here's a picture of the receiver wall on the K. Here's a picture directly of the ejector on the DB. Here's a picture directly of the ejector on the Model K. It definitely throws it a little further, I would say. And here's a like behind the ejector, kind of like a picture of how this is the DB, which just shows it's just screwed into the side of the receiver. Here is the K, where you could see it's actually cut into the side of the receiver. That's friggin' interesting. And here, if you look, here's the Model DB. You actually see you actually had to relieve the wood, and it looks like in doing that, there's a little damage here. I would think that was even fixed at the factory, I think. But you can see how that's inlet to be cut into the stock, whereas on the K, that's totally unnecessary. Now, the bolts themselves are similar here. Just the one on the DB kind of had this round thing in it that looked a little bit weird. They say that they're not interchangeable, but I don't know about that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to fool around, but they say they're not interchangeable. So if somebody's looking for a bolt, they actually have to go and look for one for a K specifically. I guess, listen, there's a lot of changes. There's all kinds of firing pin changes. There's all kind of stuff. And they're not going to tell you which ones fit here and which ones fit there. They're just going to tell you, if it ain't for that model gun, you're sunk. So what I'd like to do is, at this point, check this out. Let's pull both bolts, okay? Let's get in here in this stocks. You want to take these stocks off? Trust yourself. Get one of these. See how these screws, you don't want these things to get butchered. You actually want like a bit that will stand up in that big fat screw head right there. You don't want any of these getting butchered. So we're going to take these stocks off, because I just want to break it down right to the receivers, because I want to show you from this perspective, with the stock off, you could really see the difference. And it's funny how, just a couple of words difference on this Chronology here. Doesn't seem like much. It just says, yeah, it's an ejector change, interrupter, like 2 words, something like that. And how much different these guys are milling the receivers. Pretty wild. So here's the, let's start with the earlier one. So this was the early way to do it, was screw this ejector into the side here, and it basically carried through onto this side, where it has that nub right there that catches the edge of the rim and kicks it out. But as far as interrupter, there's this metal thing here on the side of the magazine. that acts as the interrupter. See it right there? Boom. Sticks through here. That was their way of doing it. Well, the change was this thing on the outside of the magazine is gone. And nothing curls around to the other side. This is screwed into the bottom of the magazine, like integral with that, but it's a clamp that comes across that's integral with connecting the magazine. And in here, this thing, can you see it? It's like spring loaded. How cool is that? I wish I'd be able to actuate it here where you'd really be able to see it. I could push it with a dowel, but I'm just blocking it. Trust me, when you press that in, it's springy because of this spring here. You can see it here moving on the outside, right? There we go. See how it moves? And that is a ejector and an interrupter all in one. Works together. So through picking up a gunsmith special in the middle of a deal for a firearm, we are able to check out some differences in the receivers between these two different models of 410s. Pretty interesting. And I mean, if you really want to get crazy, you have this entire list here to go through with all the different variations through the years. You know, I know where there's one. Where there's one for sale, a much more modern one. By the way, the list doesn't really end here. It actually continues on the next page with a 183T, which is an economy version. Then there's a TA and a TB with minor changes in sights and stocks. There's a 184T that's a single shot, full choke barrel. And then there's a youth, a 184TY youth. So if you have either of those, don't think I'm not showing you or covering you in the chronology. They're there. But if you really want to go crazy with every single little option of these things, you go ahead. Oh, and this was the one. I know where there's a KE for sale. So that one, it has a serial number on it. So I knew right away it was old. So that one's 71 to 86. That's like the last one that they made. Technically, it could be an 86. It could be like a last year of production. Might be kind of cool to add to the collection. It's $200. It says short trigger guard. So it doesn't have this longer finger groove trigger guard. It just has a short trigger guard on it, a rubber recoil pad. It has the C-Lect choke. And it's basically going to have all the improvements that it's had all through the years. Every single little improvement will be on that thing. Who knows? Might see. Might have a video on it. I think maybe if he knocks the price down a little bit. But how many Mossberg 410 shotguns do we need is the question that you have to ask yourself. So let's get out there with the 183K. And I'm curious to see, this would be the first time we're patterning with something besides a 12 gauge, I think, right? Oh, we might have had did we have a 16 gauge in there? I don't remember, but we never had a 410. So curious to see how much of that shot we put on the paper at that distance. So let's check it out. All right, patterning the Mossberg 183K. Got a little bit of a different setup here. There. Doing some modifications here at the range. But I think I like this better. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put the knee on here so I can get a very good base. We'll do 2 as usual. see what we got down there. I think this might be a touch shorter than what I've been shooting. But, wow, that's spread out. That is spread out, but it is centralized, basically right where my palm is. This might be a little bit left, but it's pretty centralized. Let's see what I had the choke set at. I had it set at full. I did have it set at full. That's full, wow. Yeah. Got some spread there. You figure if a bird is this big, how many pellets really could be peppering a lot of these and not breaking them. It is possible. So, I guess all we have left to do is shoot it. So let's head on over to the range. A nice, relaxing day at the trap range. But 410s can be frustrating. Tried moving the choke settings around, but you gotta just forget the score. Shot 2 sevens, which does show consistency, but a 25% hit rate or 75% miss rate, depending on how you look at it. But those 14 hits felt pretty good. So in my opinion, don't introduce beginners to trap with a 410 because of its mildness. Somebody new to shooting, you'd be prone to give them a more mild shotgun like that. But in my opinion, all the missing will turn a new visitor off, because they'd probably really maybe only hit one or two, and then even just by luck. But with a larger, shot pattern, they're probably going to wind up hitting them earlier. Of course they're going to have flinch. They're going to be afraid of the report. But it's better to use mild 12 gauge to learn, like trial by fire. You got to cure that flinch early in a shooting career. And I think that the sooner a shooter starts to hit those clays, the sooner they'll, start to get some interest in the game. So the Stevens 15 and this Mossberg 183K were acquired for basically no cost. The Stevens, totally filthy, rusty, and without a bolt. And this 183K, so dirty it looked like it would never shoot again. This is the proof that they had worth right here, but not the worth you think I'm talking about, like worth money and making the deal. The worth is how great it feels to me to bring these back to functional condition so they could live on, so they could go on bringing joy to people like they did many years ago, long before even an old dude like me was born. Even with all these misses, it was a fun time. There's something about the challenge of a 410 shooting trap, but plinking is definitely more fun, especially for the average shooter. The amount of different ammo available for 410s is interesting. Even slugs, if you use slugs, you could really go out shooting. It's basically 45 Colt. I'm using 2.5-inch shells here, and with the patterning was 2.5. I have one box of 3-inch shells, so I didn't want to use it here, but maybe they would be better. I gotta get some more. I gotta replenish my 410 ammo. The thing is, though, the 2.5-inch shells I had a velocity of 1330 feet per second, and that's with a 1/2 ounce of shot. The 3-inch shells were a much slower 1135 feet per second, but with 11/16 of an ounce of shot. So which would be better? Would be interesting to compare that performance and make a video about it. So one interesting thing about the C-Lect choke is that the plate that goes underneath the sight bead, right, that plate is removable. And if you loosen the sight bead, you can kind of slide it around a little bit, like to adjust it. So how would you know if you had it off before? How do I know that it's in the right spot to show that full is full, modified is modified? You know, the difference between full and modified is only like one turn or so on the choke. It's very, very close. So how would you know? How do I know for sure I'm at full choke? Is what you would be thinking when you take it apart and then you go to put it back together. But what's interesting, so the sight bead has graduations on it. For full modified cylinder, that is calibrated at the factory, and a mark is actually placed under that plate on the barrel in the exact spot the full mark should be. So that's where the mark on the plate, when it's installed, should be lined up to full. This way, you never lose the correct choke setting, even if you move or remove that plate. Now, mine, when I read about that, I go, well, let me go check that. Maybe I wasn't set it full this whole time. Because this was after shooting that I read that. And then mine was perfectly, I didn't even have to remove that plate. I could see the mark on the receiver on both sides of the plate. It sticks out a little bit. Mine was perfectly in line with full. But if you have a C-Lect choke, I read this under something that was specifically talking about this model, the 183 in 410. But I have a feeling that maybe that's just across the board. Maybe that's what Mossberg does with their C-Lect chokes. Or maybe that's what they've always done. So it couldn't hurt to check yours. Challenging with a 410, man. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the model 183K. Picked up as a gunsmith special in the middle of bargaining for our next featured gun. Thrown into the mix was the Stevens Model 15 and the Mossberg 183K. Totally trashed, but we've brought it back. We're shooting horrible scores at the trap range, and we're bringing them to you to show. Having a great time. So yeah, tune in next time. The big suspense on what this rifle was that all the bargaining was about is coming up next. So I hope to see you there at the Millserp Garage.